What is up, YouTube? It is Joker777, and I'm here with another review for you guys. And this is actually kind of a special one. This is not actually, whether it's, it's a TV show or a movie or music review. This is actually a book review. But it is a book that is tied into probably one of the most famous, one of the most well-known TV shows on today, and that is Game of Thrones. Of course, I'm talking about the Song of Ice and Fire series. More importantly, I'm talking about the fourth book in the series, which is A Feast for Crows. Now, I own numbers one. Here's one. This is Game of Thrones. This is the first book. The third book is actually right here. It's actually supporting the camera just because I don't have a tripod right now. It's one of the books that's in the stack. And I just recently completed A Feast for Crows, which is the fourth book. I'm definitely going to be picking up the fifth one in the series just to figure out what happens. And so, basically, A Game of Thrones is all about this kingdom called Westeros, and basically, there's a fight to see who's basically going to run the kingdom. That's about as simple of a thing as I can make it. There's so many plot lines going on with this. If you want to, try to catch up, I would suggest maybe watching the show, just because the thing I found is that I watched the show first and then I read the first book. The first season and the first book are pretty much one and the same. And we're on the third season now. I found the third season and the third book are pretty much the same, so if you want to read them, I suggest go ahead. They're good reads. Or if you watch the show, just continue to watch the show. But here's my thoughts on A Feast for Crows. So this book is very, very boring. Now, what do I mean by boring? I don't mean like that it puts you to sleep kind of boring. What I mean is that nothing really happens in this book compared to Game of Thrones, where King Robert is dead at this point. Eddard Stark tries to prove that Joffrey and basically all of Cersei's children are inbred children, and Eddard Stark gets his head cut off, and basically the splintering of the thing. A Storm of Swords, the third book in the series, I feel is the best one. So much happens in that book. And by the way, for those of you who watch the show, and for those of you who don't read the book, and for those of you who are just so disturbed about the Red Wedding, I promise you, good things are coming. So, I noticed the day after the Red Wedding episode of the show, everybody was on Facebook, they were crying, they were saying they were depressed, and this and that. Trust me, okay, good things are coming, but enough about that. In A Feast for Crows, nothing really happens, and that's why it's kind of a boring book. There's a whole lot of traveling, there's a whole lot of setup, there's a lot of setup. Nothing really happens until the last, 270-something pages of the book. Now, this book is 975 pages long, so you have to sit through 700 pages of travel, of elections, of plots, and everything else. And it's not Martin. I don't think it's fully Martin's fault. Let me explain. The fifth book in this series is called A Dance with Dragons. And that was actually supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be the fourth book in the series. I think it was. And what happens is that he ended up writing it too long. It ended up being about 2,000 pages, and he still had more material he had to keep on writing until he realized no one's going to read a 2,000-page book. This one is 900 pages long. I don't own the second one, and I haven't read it, but like I said, it's exactly like the show from what I've heard, so I imagine that one's pretty long. Storm of Swords is over 1,200 pages long. That took a long time to read. And he pretty much figured that no one wants to read a 2,000-page book. I'm a big fan of books, and even I don't want to read a 2,000-page book. And so what he basically did is he chopped it in the middle, and A Feast for Crows was born. And once again, I don't think it's his fault. This book, nothing really happens in it. And another thing that happens with this book is a lot of key characters are gone, but we'll talk about that in a second. But there's actually a section at the end saying he had to split it up, and that all the characters come back in the Dance with Dragons. My friend has read A Dance with Dragons, and he said it's way better than this. Matter of fact, I think we both agree this is kind of like the lamest book in the entire series that's going on so far. But, like I said, just not a whole lot goes on. And here's the thing about Martin, too. Martin is a very detailed, specific writer. Now, this is fantasy, okay? So there's already, got to be a lot of detail to it, but Martin goes above and beyond. So let's picture this. Any other book, let's say there's a scene in a book, and it says something like, the girl walked through flowers shining shining brightly gold as the sun. That's a normal kind of description. Martin, on the other hand, will go as far as say, the young damsel was crossing through the fields of golden flowers as they shine like the radiance of the sun upon a midsummer's day, flowing ever so gracefully as the wind caresses the sea. It's that kind of description, and there's a lot of it. He's very descriptive. Now, there is a pro to that. Number one, if you read a Martin book, you can tell where you're at. You can get the visual image in your head because he's so descriptive. The bad thing is that if you don't have anything going on in the scene and you get that description, it does tend to kind of slow down the pace. And the pacing of this book is very, very slow. Now, this does lead for a lot of like character development and things like that. We see basically the evolution of Arya. I was about to say Arianne, but that's a whole other thing. We see the evolution of Arya and basically what she's going through, and so that's the general overall view of it. Now, as far as who's in the book, because in all the books there's different characters. You have Tyrion, you have Eddard, which I guess he's only in the first book, obviously. You have Catelyn, you have Robb, you have Jon, all these people, and they have different points of view in the book. Now, in this one, we actually have some key members leave. And here's who's in the book. You have Sansa, you have Arya, you have Jaime, you have, I think that's pretty much the only ones that actually do return. Now, we do have some new, kind of older characters like Brienne and Cersei. They made their first appearances, like their first, like, stored appearances in this book. And then you have Arianne, who is the Princess of Dorne. Then you have what's going on in the Iron Islands. Oh, and Sam. Sam is a returning character. Without a doubt, my favorite 2 points of view were definitely Jaime and Sam. I love Jaime's because Jaime's is exactly like Tyrion. I love these 2 characters because Jaime and Tyrion are so hilarious. They bring so much humor to this series. And it's sad because Tyrion's not in this, but he will be back in A Dance with Dragons, which I'm excited to get into. But anyways, Jaime and Tyrion have that kind of smart aleck humor that I like, and I wish that they would let the show basically play out their thoughts, because their thoughts, what they think in the book, are sometimes more hilarious than what they actually say. And so, I love Jaime's point of view just because not only is he funny, but he's also trying to show that he can be more than just a Kingslayer. He can be more than just a Lannister. He can be the good guy that everyone wants him to be. I also enjoy Sam because Sam grows up so much in this book, in A Feast for Crows. And so much goes right for Sam, and he does so much that I'm just so proud of him. You know, he's really kind of, you know, become really more than just this weak character that he was. If you remember him from the first, like, 3 books, he was just this weak character who did whatever he was told. He always did the right thing. In this book, he finally steps up, he finally, you know, takes control of himself, and he starts sticking up for himself, which is what I love about a character, when he's able to stand up for himself, basically prove who he is, and so that's why I enjoyed the Sam plotline so much. The Arya, Sansa, and Cersei plot lines, they were okay. I wasn't like foaming at the mouth to read them. Cersei's was kind of interesting just because we see how truly evil she is. And so I think that was, you know, a much needed thing to invite Cersei in. Brienne's was okay. Brienne's had some action in it. There was some fights in there that were definitely good, and we definitely got to see her develop as a character. And Arya is really going through a change. She's going through a dark change, and it's obvious to see why. Is because, you know, she lost her family, and in this book we kind of see her take that dive off the dark end. As far as Sansa and the Dornish plot lines, they're okay. There's nothing really a whole lot going there. The Iron Islands, I'm gonna say it, I hated that plot line. It was so god-awfully boring. And for those of you that are wondering what's going on in that plot line, all they're doing is electing a king, which you can tell in 1 or 2 chapters. You don't need 3 or 4 chapters, 5 chapters to tell me how you're voting for a king for the Iron Islands. So I realize this video is running on kind of long. I'm going to make a part 2, and I'll be right back.